This is Kelly.
And this is Amy.
And you're listening to Diary of a Death Investigator. This is our part 2 of Meet Mr. B, or Papa B. I already forgot how we're calling him.
I like that Mr. B better than
Mr.
Papa.
B.
Make me feel like an old guy. Maybe an old guy.
Mr. B, like Mr. Belvedere. But I feel like part 1 was a more serious episode. And we finally got the sound better too, because I realized my microphone was wrong. So part 2 will be a little bit more... I don't know. We'll have a little bit more comedy in it, a little bit more
lighthearted.
Yeah, lighthearted. And when we left off, we were talking about dogs. So you, in between podcasts, we were talking about Amy worked with cadaver dogs, but you worked with the police dogs. And you said you could give us information on how all of that started and came about.
Well, first of all, they're amazing. I mean, I've seen some cases where there's no way that a human could ever have discovered or made the case without a canine there. They're just great tools. They're just amazing. And the training and stuff that those dogs went through and the training that the handler goes through also amazed me. And it's just a nonstop type thing. And I was interested in getting into the canine unit at one time, and it just came to be just too much time. And I looked into it and the training and stuff involved. And I started a family, and I had kids and that type of thing, and I just couldn't substantiate the time to be involved in it because it's just it's 40 hours on the job, but it's also probably another 60 or 70 or 80 hours of working with the dog because the dog goes home with the officers, and they're working with those dogs at home even. It's just around the clock. Anyway, it's just really amazing. I think we had at one time 8 dogs on the police department in its height of it. And all the dogs were German Shepherds. And when I say German Shepherds, these dogs were German. And I'll give you a little bit of the history. I had a good friend that was in it. He had to go take German. They actually gave him German because all the dogs were trained over in Germany and were trained with German commands. So that was good here in America because nobody else could give these dogs any commands because they only understood German.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons for that. But they were trained in Germany by Germans, and so they were all, for the most part, only understood German. So the handlers had to take some German to give them the commands. So anyway, that was very interesting. And the other part of it was they just run like a German Nazi concentration camp. The breeding, they don't allow every dog, they have certain dogs when they pair them up and they have litters and stuff. There's only a certain few, only the elite make it out of that group or make it out of that litter. They actually, to keep the breed strong, they euthanize 90% of the dogs.
Oh.
And it's kind of sad in that sense, but that's how they keep the breed so strong.
Wow.
The dog doesn't meet the requirements. They're tested. And, one of them would be like a gunshot. Don't run away after guns fired. Some dogs just turn around and run. Very fearful of that noise and so forth of the gun. And rightfully so. But these dogs were all trained to handle gunshots, for instance. And they're given tests and stuff. And if they don't pass these tests, they're euthanized. And that's how they keep and I make it sound like it's, and I don't remember exactly the percentage, but it's a very high percentage that are euthanized out of a litter that they're looking at. Anyway, these dogs are highly, like I say, highly trained and before they even get to the handler in Germany. And so they've got the basic stuff down, and they're further trained by when the handler gets them. And they're not cheap. Last I heard, and this was way back when, these dogs cost $3,500 to $4,000 a piece. And the handler pays that, and then they're reimbursed. The handler gets, they live at home with the handler. They get a food supplement, and I don't remember how much that was. And they get 5%, working in a specialized unit. They get a 5% increase in pay for what they're currently making. So that's a pretty good little raise, but still doesn't cover that you got the dog living at home. They're giving some food supplement or something. I think that the city paid for the food. I don't know how that was all regulated, but I think it was just done by receipts and stuff, by dog food and stuff. But anyway, so it's really expensive to have a dog. And then, like I say, the handler had to learn a little bit of German. And the first ones that I had experience with were very sharp. They're uniform trained. That's the other thing that was interesting. They don't know for sure, but they think the dogs are colorblind, but they pick up the stripe on your pants. And we used to have a white stripe on our pants, and they pick up on that stripe. And then the odors and stuff, the gun belt, the leather, that type of thing was the other thing that they think. So the dog knows the good guys and who the good guys are and the bad guys are type thing. And so anyway, and that was one of the things that they'd always tell you, even as an officer and being in uniform, do not get near the police car if there's a dog canine. And that's why they put canine unit all over the car, and they don't try to hide it or anything, but they really put that out in bright letters, and they even put it out on the roof with the helicopter, so they know where all the units are. The helicopter can see down and see where the canine unit is. But anyway, they're very well advertised. There's no secrets or anything out there because they're very protective of the car. And I'll never forget one of my first times being a rookie. I walked up to the police car and being fat, dumb, and happy, thinking it was just a police car and didn't even think about being a canine. And it said canine right there in front of me. And I walked right up there and I'm standing there. And all of a sudden I hear this deep growl. And all of a sudden the car's rocking. He's trying to get to me. And I'm about 3 feet away. And it's pretty scary as that dog's growling and saliva coming out and his teeth are baring. And he wants a piece of you because you're near his car. And very protective of the car, very protective of their handler, of course. You can't even, sometimes the handler will tell you, take a couple steps back. Don't get near me. Just the fact that they're so protective of their handler and stuff. And it's amazing to see the loyalty and to see that. It's kind of neat. Think that dog is that protective and stuff. And then they go home. And I'll tell you about a quick case that we had. It's very sad, but the handler brought the dog home and they just had a baby. And it was their first baby. The dog was very jealous of the baby.
Oh, no.
Not that bad. But the dog growled at the baby, and they're very cognizant, and they had to keep the dog away from the baby and stuff just for self-protection. And he was thinking about giving the dog away, and just about ready to give the dog to another unit or to another handler because the new baby in the house and stuff. But anyway, the dog got into this was the old days, had a diaper pail. Got into the diaper pail and attacked the diapers. And with the odor and stuff of the baby on there, I think, and that's what they're thinking. And got a bunch of the plastic from the diaper ingested into his digestive system, and he ended up killing the dog. He got all this plastic and stuff, and it wrecked up his intestines and his stomach or something, and he operated on the dog. The dog died during the operation. And just to go to show you that the kind of the loyalty and the how devoted these dogs are. And he was very upset at the whole thing because he was really attached to the dog. And then the other thing was he spent a lot of time training it. And $3,500,
Did they have to pay that? The officer had to pay the $3,500?
I think that they did, but they were compensated in food, and then they were given a 5%.
Did they get to keep the dog once the dog retired?
Yeah, and they kept the dog once the dog retired. Yeah, and they only worked these dogs for 4 or 5 years. That's about all they could work. It was really hard on them. Anyway, I know one that worked 5 or 6 years, 6 years, I think, and they ended up retiring him out, and he lived to be about 11 or 12. But anyway, yeah, they retire them out usually after 4, 5, 6 years. They start losing a little bit of their energy and everything else. It's pretty hard on them too. So one of the most interesting cases I ever had with a canine was we got a call of an alarm in a Safeway store, and we get there, the front window's gone. We know possibly somebody in there, and the procedure is to send the canine in first. And so I was a rookie, so I got picked to go in with the handler. And basically my job is I have my gun out and I protect the handler because he can't have his gun out. He's giving commands to the dog. Sometimes they take commands visually with hand signals, or they do it verbally. And it's kind of neat to watch him, and he'll give him hand signals and the dog will actually follow the hand signals. But anyway, it's kind of a highly trained thing. It's amazing to watch him work. But anyway, so we go inside, dog goes in, I'm backing the handler up. So I just stay with the handler. And he tells the dog to go search. And he gives him the command and gives him a motion with his hand. And the dog runs out and circles a few of the aisles and comes back to the dog food section. Goes right to the dog food section. Starts sniffing, pawing, kind of growling, indicating that something going on here, the dog food. And the handler, kind of mad at him, hadn't eaten for a while, comes up to him, hits him on the back of the head, go search. So anyway, he goes up, comes back down the aisle, comes right back to the dog food. The handler's really mad now and hits him on the back of the head again, tells him, go search, and walks down the aisle with him, dragging him by the leash, takes him to the next aisle and says, go search. The dog makes a Yui, comes back right to the dog food. So anyway, I'm looking at him. He's looking at me. So anyway, Maybe this dog knows what he's doing. So anyway, we kind of start moving some things around. And there's this punk that broke in the place, stealing cigarettes. And the first thing I do is I start moving the 50-pound bag of dog food around. And I see a carton of cigarettes on the dog food thing. Something going on here. This isn't right. And I found 3 or 4 cartons of cigarettes. And then I see the foot and the jeans, grab the guy by the ankle and pull him out. And it was a 19-year-old kid. We talked to him later, and he didn't plan it to do it that way. Hiding it up. Just one of those things that he saw these big bags. He'd hide under that lower shelf, where the big 50-pound bags of dog food are. He'd hide under that shelf and cover himself up with the dog food, the bags of dog food, and nobody would see him. And that was his thinking. And that he forgot that the canine was, this dog was pretty sharp. So I thought that was pretty good that the dog did that. And the handler was kind of upset a little bit at himself because he should have known that the dog knew. Anyway,
scolding the dog.
You get the boss of the Safeway there, comes there to the manager to come fix up the window and close it up and stuff. And he says, well, let me give you the dog a reward. And what kind of reward do you want to give him? The handler asked him. He says, well, I'll give him a steak or something. I'll give him a raw steak. He says, I bet you can. And anyway, they made a bet. And the guy wanted some, he says, I'll tell you what, if I win this bet, give me a 25-pound bag of dog food. The manager goes, no problem. I'll give you a 25-pound bag of dog food if you can make this dog eat raw steak. So anyway, he gets the dog, takes him off the leash, sits him down. The manager comes up. He's got a New York steak. It's about 1.5 pounds because I remember it looked good. It was a good-sized piece of meat, raw. And he puts it on the ground and throws it to the dog. And the dog just sits there and looks at it. Look up with those big eyes and look at the boss or the handler. You could see what he was thinking. Please tell me I can eat this. Please tell me I can eat this. And, doesn't say anything. So he says, you want to try anything else? He's not going to eat it. And the manager of the Safeway says, well, he picks it up and puts it in his nose. He takes a bite of it himself and then tried for about 5 or 10 minutes, throwing it at him, doing everything. The dog would not touch it. So finally, okay, I'll give you the dog food. Make him eat it. And the guy gives German command, whatever it was, and eat it. And the dog hit that steak. It was gone in like 5 seconds. All that thing down. And anyway, and he got a 25-pound bag of dog food out of it too, as a result. But I'll never forget that dog would not only eat on command. And that was due to the fact that they were afraid that somebody could poison the dog while they were on duty or something, or give something to the dog. And so the dog would only, when I was working, would only eat on the handler's command. And I always thought that was amazing that they were that well trained.
Meanwhile, my dog drools all over the place. When he sees something, I don't think he has any self-control.
Yeah, this dog was, you could see it in his eyes. I could see it in the dog looking up and, please tell me I can eat that. Please tell me. But you knew that he wasn't going to touch that. So the handler gave go ahead. Those were the days when they let dogs do a little bit more. And they had another one time, of a missing juvenile and 6-year-old. It was kind of more of I always thought back about this. I thought they should have arrested mom and dad, but they lost track of the kid. And I don't know how you lose track of a 6-year-old, but it was during the day, early evening, and the kid went next door to the neighbor's house and was playing with the kids there. And the kids went down to another house. Anyway, make a long story short, the kid was about 4 or 5 houses down, and they didn't know where he was. And they thought he was next door. They went next door, couldn't find him, so they called us. So I'm the first unit there, and I get there. I do talking. So the neighbors do the initial investigation, talked to a few of the neighbors around. Well, yeah, we saw him. He was playing over here with a bunch of other kids, and he was down at this house. So I go to all the houses, check all the neighbors' houses, can't find him. So anyway, I called for some more units. Then they called the canine in. This was like at 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Summer, it was really hot. Remember, it was hot and stuff. Figuring that, everybody's sweating, that type of thing. That might have had something to do with it. I don't know. But anyway, they gave the dog some of his clothes. He had some dirty, typical 6-year-old. They found some dirty clothes and a couple pairs of his shoes, and they let the dog sniff it. They told the dog, go find it, and that type of thing. And I'm saying, this isn't going to work. I mean, come on. This is only something you see on TV or something. And anyway, the dog starts going down the sidewalk. He walked up the driveway of the neighbor's house, goes back to the sidewalk, goes to the next house, goes up the driveway, now comes back. He did that for 3 or 4 houses. About the 5th or 6th house, he goes up the driveway. He stays, and he's kind of weird. Then he goes back down the next driveway, but then he comes back to the other driveway. And I think what he was thinking was, it's either one of these houses. He's picked up the scent. Anyway, he actually went to the 6th or 7th house that the kid never went to, but he wanted to check that one too, I guess. But he came back to the 6th house, and he goes crazy on the driveway. So we all look at each other and think, well, probably the kid's there in the house. And sure enough, knock on the door. The kid's in the living room, and he's watching cartoons with 5 or 6 of the other kids, some other 6, 7, 8-year-olds, and they're all in there just watching TV. But anyway, I always thought that was amazing that he had tracked that kid just from the odor or the smell right to the driveway. I bet you he probably would have, if he would have let him, we went up the front door and went in the house and probably found the kid right there and went right to the kid. They didn't let him do that, but once they knew it, he discovered that was the driveway he went up. They found him. But anyway, I thought that was amazing that Doc could do that. And anyway, I thought that was great. And they found the kid. Everyone was happy. And of course, mom and dad are going crazy because they don't, they're missing their 6-year-old. And they were so happy and stuff that very good public relations type thing for the police department and for the dog. Kind of the heroes, type thing. The dog was a hero. But anyway, I thought that was kind of a neat case. And that was pretty routine. I mean, that was pretty common that you see that a lot. And that was when canines were being used pretty heavily. And I don't think they do that as much now. I just don't think that they're used as much as they're not trained. I know they have the narcotics dogs now, and they're amazing, but they're not German Shepherds either. They're different type of labs and stuff and different types of dogs. And I've seen a few of them, but they're amazing, but they only can be trained. And this is what I'm told. And I don't know if this is true, but this is what a couple of the officers told me. They only can be trained for a couple of narcotics. They might have a marijuana dog. They might have a methamphetamine dog. They might have a cocaine, opiate type dog that identifies opiates, but they can't identify opiates, fentanyl, marijuana, and pills. And
there's so many different drugs now.
Yeah. So they only can identify. They can only train them to find 1 or 2 drugs. And so they have a couple dogs. They have 2 or 3 I know that they use depending on what drug it is they're looking for. I didn't see this one because this was before my time, but I read about this one in the paper. But they had one of the dogs found, they knew this guy was a heavy duty manufacturer of methamphetamine, and they couldn't find it. And it stopped him, and they knew they'd been following him. Narcotics has been following him for a while, and they knew that he had a load of stuff in that car, and they couldn't find it. And they turned this dog loose, and it took him about 15 seconds. And I think he found like 4 pounds or something of it, and it was hidden in a spare tire or something.
Whoa.
And so it was really hidden very well. And the dog went right to it in about 15, 20 seconds. It was in the trunk or something. But I heard the story and I was kind of amazed. But that's the kind of things you're hearing about the canines now. You don't see them involved too much in the enforcement thing of it. And I'll tell you one other quick story that I was involved in. It was the good old days. This was 1975, 76, summer, August, hot, nighttime, big party, Friday night, kids all over the street, taking over the street, parking, blocking driveways, drunk, throwing beer cans, typical street party, and taken over by, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. Drugs are going crazy. The alcohol's going like crazy.
Yeah, it was the 70s.
Yeah, and, it was a mess. And 6 different calls on it. I'm one of the first units there. And I look down, and there's probably 300, 400 kids in the street. And it's a whole block, and it just on the front lawns and in the cars and on top of cars. And they're partying like crazy. It's a mess. 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock now. It's almost close to midnight. So anyway, I call the sergeant. We get 3 or 4 other units, and we get a canine there. Put the canine, put the, what do you call those things they put on their muzzle? Put a muzzle on him, and put a big heavy-duty leash on him, and put him out front. And it was about a 10-foot leash, and started in the middle of the street. 3 officers on each side with the canine in the middle. They had a bullhorn, made an announcement. You have 5 minutes to clear the street. If not, we will clear it. Party goes on. The hell, and they're starting to throw bottles at us now. The F words are coming out, and you can't do this, and these are my rights. I can, and oh God, you're hearing all that. They're yelling and screaming, throwing bottles at us now. Nobody's leaving. So anyway, get the dog all fired up. The handler gets the dog all fired up, says a few words to the dog. The dog is growling. He's trying to break the leash. He wants to get to somebody. You can tell that this dog wants somebody. Holds him on the leash. He's got 2 hands on him and says, go. And he says, keep up with me, guys. And so 3 of us on each side, and he walks right down the middle of the street. And that dog is barking, snarling, and all of a sudden, you can hear a pin drop. All you hear is a dog snarling and barking. The kids are running like crazy. Car doors are slamming. Cars are leaving. They're all going the opposite direction. Within about 5 minutes, we had that street cleared, and everybody was out of there. You could hear a pin drop in that street after about 5 minutes. So there was a fear of that. That was what the mentality was in those days, a fear of that. The dog was pretty muzzled up so that even if the dog got away, he couldn't, I don't think he could do too much damage. He could scratch you, I guess, or knock you down. I guess he could do damage to you, but he tried to do something. This dog was fired up. But anyway, they had it all muzzled up. I'll never forget that, how he cleared that street instantaneous. And there's no way that we could have done that like that without that dog. So anyway, they don't allow that too much anymore. They don't use them on crowd control. Not in California anymore, as far as I know. Unless it's an emergency situation or something that's really dire, or really, they got to get the street cleared. But anyway, I would never forget that, how the fear of that dog, and cleared that street within about 5 minutes. So anyway.
I'm going to switch gears now from dogs to decomp cases because, Amy was a death investigator, so she got to see all the good stuff. Did you go on any decomp cases?
Well, there was always saying on the police department, and she knows it, when you got the call, it always come out as, I haven't seen Joe Smith for, last 4 days or something. It'll be an aunt or an uncle or dad or brother or sister or something. He hasn't answered the phone. We haven't seen him. We'd go and knock on neighbors. No, he hasn't been out. We haven't seen him. He's usually out mowing the lawn. You'd see him. We haven't seen him for 4 or 5 days. You start approaching the door, and you'd be on the sidewalk, and you'd hit the front lawn, and the smell would hit you. And you knew. And so anyway, it was always the rookie or something that would send in and mask him up. And this was before the days of masks and the flu masks and all that type of thing, the masks that people were wearing. We didn't have those things in those days. So anyway, you put a handkerchief or something over your nose or your face, some type of covering and stuff, just to kind of block the smell out, because you knew what you were going to find inside there. Anyway, a number of cases like that you get involved in. And, most of the cases that we had, somebody would find them before it get too bad. But there's a number of times that we had cases like that where the body had been, laying there for 4, 5, 6 days. Yeah.
You wouldn't just stick your fingers up your nose to pull your nose?
Well, guys would do the alcohol thing too. What's that? They just put the things in their nose?
Vicks or...
what's it, menthol?
Yeah. They do the vapor thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they put things in their nose, the cotton things in their nose.
Vaseline and...
Yeah, and they do that. And if you're going to spend any time in there, like if it was a homicide investigation or something, the homicide guys would all have
cigars.
They spent some time in there. Yeah. And they came out with some masks and stuff, some breathing They actually have a breathing apparatus and stuff too. They have now, I guess, that they go in there and stuff. So always interesting cases, but and most of them, I don't remember any of them that being homicides. Most of them were natural causes. Guy had a heart attack or something, or or whatever, and it wasn't any violence or a homicide or anything. It was mostly a natural causes type thing, that an older guy or older lady or something living by themselves, and you go back there and you find them laying in bed. They've been laying in bed. They were sick or something. Just died in bed, died in their sleep.
Did you guys have to check the bodies, or did you leave that up to the death investigators?
I never touched anything. I was always kind of told, don't touch anything.
Well, that's good. He listened.
Yeah, I didn't want to anyway. I mean, I always thought it was kind of, I didn't like the hands-on type thing, that you have to do that. But I was always told, I work in patrol. I worked a little bit of investigations, but I worked property crimes. I never worked assaults or homicides or anything like that. Yeah, I was told you never touch anything. No, you don't roll them over or anything. You don't touch anything. It's a crime scene, so don't touch anything and leave everything alone. And once you confirm that they're passed or they're dead, that just get out and turn it over to the investigation. The homicide guys or the whatever who's investigating it.
Amy would have appreciated you.
Yeah, and that's the way we did it. We never touched anything, and I didn't want any part of that. Touching dead bodies or anything.
You never know what you're going to find on a dead body. Ask Amy.
Yeah.
Oh,
we did a whole episode where she found a sandwich in a belly fold.
I can imagine.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Sometimes the thinking and stuff on that, but that was my thought, and it always worked for me. And let somebody else that knows a little bit more about it and handle it. And I didn't want to be the one to screw up the crime scene or something, or do something and let somebody get away. That was always my worst fear.
Amy, the odd thing is you can't eat like the prime rib anymore. That's his favorite type of meat. So anytime Amy can't eat it anymore because the dead body smell, that's what it reminds her of.
Oh God, that's too bad.
Burn bodies. So
yeah, I've had a couple of those too, especially in traffic accidents and stuff. get caught in that, in the car, and the car catches on fire. I had a couple of those, and a very interesting one, an airplane. A little airport called Reed Hillview Airport. It's been out in the middle of nowhere when it first opened up. And this was way back in the 60s and stuff. And this is before San Jose grew. And the airport was out there by itself, and it was way out in the middle of nowhere. And of course, the city grew up around it, right? And enveloped it.
Yeah.
And so now you've got airplanes flying over houses, flying over a major shopping center, big, huge shopping center. East Ridge. Have you ever been to East Ridge?
Yep.
Yeah, it's that Reed Hillview's out. That's the airport out there. Actually, we've had a couple of planes land on top of the building, coming up short of the runway.
Yeah.
A couple crashed into the parking lot, took out 4 or 5 cars, and it almost came back and crashed and just missed the school. School was just getting out too. They're very lucky, and it came trying to get back to the get back to the airport and came back and landed in the parking lot and exploded. And anyway, that's the case I was going to tell you about. This they overloaded the airplane, and they were going to Mexico to do help some people. There was something going on in Mexico. Some type of flood or disaster had happened, and they had some relatives, and there's 3 of them on the plane, and they loaded this little plane up with a bunch of supplies for the people they're going to take, to give them to in Mexico. And they take off from Reed Hillview Airport, and they go over just barely get up over it, and then they realize that they're not going to make it. So he makes a U-turn trying to get back to the airport, and he comes back, and he crashes the airplane right in the parking lot of the school. And the school had just got out. And to this day, I do not know how in the heck they didn't kill a bunch of people. Anyway, the plane comes back down and comes in, nose, and just hits the ground. I was at the shopping center when it happened, and I heard an explosion. And I was pretty close. And I said, Jesus, what's going on? And I look up, and I see this big flame shooting up in the air. And it's up above the telephone poles. And I remember looking at the telephone pole and looking at the telephone lines, and it was above the telephone lines. The flame was coming up. And, oh, God, what's that? And I knew the school was there. So I hustled back there, and I couldn't even get near it. I got it within about 100 feet of the plane, and the heat hit me. And I knew there's nothing I could do. I couldn't get in. The heat was unbelievable. And it was fully loaded with fuel. Fuel was going like crazy. And
it's a good accelerant.
And of course, the school had got all the kids, and the kids they keeping everybody away. And so I just kind of set up a perimeter and got fire there and called for an ambulance, but that was to no avail. Anyway, the fire get there, and they get the fire out. And it kind of burned itself out. The fuel is really tough to put out. But anyway, and so the fire's out. 3, what do we call it? What do you call them? Crispy critters were in there. And they were, that's what they look like. And anyway, I'll never forget the one back passenger sitting in the back seat. There's a plastic window, and it's made of hard plastic. And you could actually see the fingernail marks on the plastic where he tried to get out and scrape it. Get that window open. And anyway, to no avail. But you actually see the scratch marks on the window from trying to get out.
Amy, would those people have died on impact?
I think so. Maybe not. It came back pretty quick. Well, it didn't get a lot of altitude. Hit nose first, and it just that gas tank exploded and opened up. And once that opened up, it was over. Yeah, and they didn't have enough time to do anything.
Probably the explosion. You would like to think the explosion would get them. I'm just going to say that because it's not a good mental image. So.
Right.
Yeah, but anyway, they're still all sitting in their seats. There's nothing. They were belted in still. I think the seatbelts were even on. They didn't get out of their seatbelts.
Gosh,
that was a.
You know what Amy just got us for Christmas? She got us these. They're like handheld things you can keep on your keychain or in your car, and it helps you slice the seatbelt if you get stuck, and then you can also.
Yeah, I've heard about those. Yeah,
hit your window and knock your window out.
Yeah.
So I can't decide if I want to carry it on me, like on my keys, or if I want to leave it in my car because if they're with my keys.
I don't know if that would help them at all. But I don't know. It's
not bad.
No, not in the plane, but anyone else in a car or yourself in a car, because.
Yeah, because sometimes the gas is leaking, and you break the gas tank in a car. You have maybe 30 seconds, maybe a minute or something, maybe to get out. It hits that hot exhaust pipe, or hits something and it goes up. So yeah, you might have a better chance. But these people had no chance in this airplane.
We just did a podcast called Plane, Trains, and Automobiles, so that would have been a good one.
Well, I had an interesting one with the train too. We got a train track that goes along Monterey Highway down here by where I water ski, and train doing about 60 miles an hour, and they can't stop those things. People don't realize that. And there was a non-crossing, it didn't have the arms, and it had the red lights.
Crossing guard, yeah.
The arms, they didn't have the arms. And this was in like 1974, 75. And that train was doing 60 miles an hour. And it's a bunch of fields out there, crops, a lot of corn. What else was out there? Something else. There's a couple other things. And so they had some farm workers out there that were picking and doing it and picking the crops and stuff and loading them up and doing that type of thing. And they're getting off work, I guess. I think there were 7 of them in a van. And they crossed that track right in front of that train. That train hit them. The train couldn't stop.
Yeah.
There was bodies, pieces of bodies, all along the track.
Yep.
For miles. I mean, for a mile. When that train finally stopped, the van, what was left of it, was way down here. I don't think there was anything even left in the van, but the body parts were all over the place along the track, both sides of the track. And I remember us walking along the track, following the path there, and marking, legs, arms, and fingers, and head here, piece here. Jesus Christ, what a fiasco that was. But I'll never forget that train hit that van, and man, it just, I think that a lot of the even in that case, I remember hearing something about it later. A lot of those people they didn't even have records of them because they were here illegally, and they couldn't even identify a couple of the body parts of the bodies. And didn't have any way to identify them. Before, like you were saying, before
That's
DNA.
The worst.
Yeah.
And they had fingers and stuff, but if you weren't fingerprinted and you didn't have your fingerprints on file, I mean, you couldn't be identified, right?
What happens in that case if they're not documented? I mean, we had a story that you told us about where they weren't. So do they just keep them in the morgue and then wait until they can identify them, or
the county would end up burying them as an unidentified person?
I think that's what happened. I think there was 2 or 3 of them that they couldn't identify. They couldn't put the body parts together or figure it out because they didn't have enough information even on the people.
Right.
And fingerprints and that type of thing. And it was the only way they could identify you.
I think now they go back and try to identify them through DNA if they can. If the family or something is interested, they'll exhume them. But family might not even know where they are.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, it's one of those ones you don't forget because it's just, really ugly and really...
crazy, traumatic.
Traumatic, yeah. Anyway, it was just one of those ones that you shake your head at and think, God darn, man. There were 7 or 8 or something in this van. And
well, they had to have seen the train.
What?
They had to have seen the train.
Yeah, you'd think they heard it or something. I don't know. Maybe they
ran out of gas or something.
Maybe they could have been, singing or dancing or, listening to music or something and didn't hear the train coming. But, the last thing I remember that train, that train was doing 55, 60 miles an hour when it hit it. Yeah, and it was a mile down because I remember the point of impact was here, and we were picking up body parts for like a mile. The train stopped like a mile down the road. And
did they have cameras on trains back then or no?
I don't think so. I don't think there was any cameras on trains. I don't think we had the technology in those days to even process that. Videotape was what first came out.
Oh, right.
Video cameras, big cameras, like TV cameras. And anyway, not like our phones nowadays. But yeah, I don't think they had any cameras or anything like that in those days. But yeah, all the intersections now, even at the train crossings, I think have cameras on them, right? I think they have cameras now.
Well, and Amy said, the trains have cameras on them now.
They do. Technology and stuff. But there was no cameras or none of that stuff was on there. So yeah, anyway, there wasn't a lot that could be done. They did put I know later that, I don't know if somebody sued or family member or something. I don't know all the details, but I know right after that there was crossing arms on that intersection.
Well, yeah.
A couple of them along Monterey Highway there that this was the early 70s, that there was crossing arms there. That's what happened. I think all of them now have the red flashing lights and the arms come down. So.
Well, look at that. You see, you didn't even want to podcast with us, and now we got 2 episodes out of him. So if you guys like talking to Mr. B, email us at kelly@diaryofadeathinvestigator.com, or you can message us on our Instagram page, Diary of a Death Investigator. And until next time.